and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who's always just in bounds. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Is that your way of saying that, like, I never say anything inappropriate, but I'm always just on the verge of doing so?
Just on the line.
Then you're a liar, because I say inappropriate stuff all the time. I just try not to say it on mic, where there's an audio record of it.
We will be talking about Bolaños' goal that maybe should have been for Ecuador against Brazil later in the show. We're going to recap all of Saturday's games and all of the goal from Saturday later in the show. Oh. We're also going to preview the two games on Sunday from the Copa America Centenario. But first, one more time, USA 0, Colombia 2.
I don't think we've dedicated enough thought to this. So should we do our third take?
This is our third take. This is more like the step back and think about big picture take, I think. So here's something occurred to me, Taylor. We didn't really have any big tactical changes from Klinsmann during the game. We sort of went to a 4-4-2 at the end with Zardes and Dempsey up top, but it wasn't dramatic. Right?
No.
There was no tactical rethinking.
That's the equivalent of, like, the building's on fire and being like, maybe water?
Yeah.
Like, that's what you're doing there.
So we're 2-0 down, and there were no big changes, just a sprinkling of water. Mm-hmm. And it put me in mind of the Wall Street Journal article, which actually a lot of people have sent to us. Mm-hmm. Everyone's like, I saw this and I thought of you guys, which is really nice to hear from people. Mm-hmm. And also we've both read, it's by Matt Futterman, it's a Q&A with Jurgen Klinsmann, in which he talks about the American culture where, in, say, baseball or American football or basketball, you can stop play and change tactics, and how it shouldn't work like that in soccer. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So it's Klinsmann making the case for no in-game change. That's maybe an extreme version of it.
Well, it's that, certainly. But there's a lot of other information in there that I think is relevant both to a general conversation about Jurgen Klinsmann and also a discussion about maybe his plans against Colombia and his plans going forward with the U.S. national team.
So what would they be?
Well, I think the one that really stood out to me was when he was talking about the mentality in American sports, that we have this idea that sports are for education. And I do get the impression that it was sort of like, on the one hand, it's you play sports with the idea of one day maybe you go to college and then you play sports in college. But I also think
you get your financial analyst degree, right?
Oh, of course,
Like it's a path
or degree in communications.
It's a path to the middle class if you don't have money to go to college.
Right. But I also think there was an element of sports are about, we teach you how to do this and we teach you how to do this, and then you learn how to do this and then you're told how to do that. Mm-hmm. And you don't really learn for yourself, like, the fundamental nature, as I think Klinsmann sees it, of how to play sports, which is that you've got to make yourself do it. He talks about seeing Gerd Müller score in, like, the World Cup final and being like, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go practice 4 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what he doesn't see in Americans. It's essentially a kind of him calling us soft a little bit, but I get where he's coming from also a little bit.
And here's the interesting thing. We went back and looked at some of these phrases. Like, we thought, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
We went back to Klinsmann's initial introductory press conference, which you can find on ussoccer.com. You search Klinsmann introductory press conference. Right. He says basically all the same things about how we have to change. To be a successful soccer nation, we have to change the sporting culture, right? And, like, players need to, like, be more aggressive and think for themselves and be proactive. It's all these things that sort of set the stall as a coach who is like, I am not going to, like, tinker with tactics and try and build a winning team in that way. My job is to change the mentality of this whole country and create a nation of players who are aggressive and proactive and can win games on their own.
Right. And so then
I'm maybe overstating, but that's the broad strokes of it, right?
Yeah, the broad strokes. And certainly, and I think what happened with that is maybe he certainly talked about playing more attacking football at different points in his managerial tenure. But it also makes me wonder, I think, because you pointed it out and it kind of blew my mind, if that whole I want to be proactive when it comes to soccer is more about he wants American players to want to go out there and win and fight each other for spots, and less about I want American players to go out and pass the ball really well and score a bunch of goals.
It seems like it was more about be proactive about your career,
right?
Be proactive about just having the mentality to win the ball first, all that kind of stuff. And what this put me in mind of is that is Klinsmann's priority, right? That is his changing the culture of American soccer is the number one, number two, number three, all the way down. And, like, building a winning team in terms of, like, something like, say, Costa Rica do, which we'll talk about later, the way Costa Rica have come up with this weird and crazy system that works and it helps them to maybe win games that they shouldn't do and get to World Cup quarterfinals because of a tactical system. I think Klinsmann doesn't think of that as his job at all. His job is the long-term thing of changing the mentality. And the result is going out to Colombia, going out against Colombia with a system that isn't finely calibrated to play against them.
Yeah, and it almost makes me think of, like, and obviously this is going to betray my lack of knowledge when it comes to philosophy, but it's this idea of, like, if you want to build a city...
I did one semester.
So did I, exactly. Yeah. Intro to philosophy. Shock of all shocks. But if you want to...
So how many credits do we have between us?
2, I think. I'm not sure. I think, 6 credit hours maybe? I forget how that works. I'm not even sure. But it reminds me almost of like the idea of if you're going to found a city. Okay. Like if you're Roman, you build the grid system and you have the forum in the middle and you have the layout. And then eventually, as the city progresses, you get people who come in and think different thoughts and become philosophers. And then you have different approaches to the way you think about things.
All right, I'm with you so far.
But you don't start the city by being like, okay, what we're going to do is we're all going to sit around and come up with the guiding philosophy of what... It's like, no, we got to survive. We're building a city.
Let's build an aqueduct.
Right. We need water. And so that's a little bit what this reminds me of, is that Klinsmann is trying to kind of put the philosophy before the idea of building the aqueduct, which is getting the players to understand what they're doing, to understand their responsibilities. And it seems a little bit like that can be explained away in his mind by, well, they're professionals. We need to see that they can go out there and figure it out for themselves and learn how to do it themselves. I'm trying to coach them how to do that, not how to coach them to do what I tell them to do in any given moment.
Yeah, because he also talks about... the Matt Futterman, the writer, literally asks him, why do you speak in such generalities? Right? About like people being in their rhythm and up in their game and all that sort of stuff. And Klinsmann's response is something like, well, like, how much information should I give them? Do I give them 5 bullet points, 20 bullet points? We don't really like deeply prepare for each opponent. And it immediately made me think of like the way Diego Simeone has a little plan for everything that happens. The way Jose Mourinho
has an 18-page book for his players every game.
Yes.
Like the idea of Jose Mourinho, like if Jose Mourinho read that, he would say, like, no, you give them 15 pages. Like it doesn't matter. You don't give them 5 bullet points. Yeah. And then you find the players that can respond to that, to your coaching style. Those are the players you stick with and continue to stick with.
And it put me in mind as well of Jermaine Jones in this game. Like, Jermaine Jones, it seemed, had one of the worst games we've seen him have. I'm kind of an admirer of him. I feel like he should have been an effective player in aggressively breaking up Colombian play, especially unshackled from a pure defensive midfield role. And yet we saw him kind of almost literally chasing shadows. Chasing James' shadows, getting caught, like, sometimes trying to go to the left, sometimes trying to go to the middle, trying to cover too much space. And then he was completely off his game in terms of passing, which I'm sure is related. And I wonder if maybe he'd been given vague instructions, but not... He'd been given, like, 2 bullet points. And maybe it'd been better to give him a dossier about, like, which way James likes to go, which, you know, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and I don't mean for this to sound, like, derogatory or negative, but it almost reminds me of like disciplining a dog, where it's sort of like, no, you have to set rules because that's how they function. Like if you have this idea like, oh, I'm being mean to my dog, she's so sweet, I don't want to be mean. It's like, no, you're stressing her out because she doesn't know her role. Yeah. And I do think with professional footballers, it's like, I need to know what I'm supposed to do.
At least the parameters, right?
So I'm not panicking and turning my back and overcommitting to balls. Like, people need to know their role and know their responsibilities so they can function productively within a team.
This is what we talked about we wished that this 4-3-3 with like the weird job that the wingers have to do, where they have to sometimes be ahead and in behind of Clint Dempsey, sometimes they have to be all the way back to give some defensive cover. That's a big ask of Bobby Wood and Jesse Ziders and whoever else will play out there, and it's a tough job, and it's not something you can just ask someone to do like quickly, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. You got maybe 1 game to practice it, and then we're going to play Colombia. Like we talked about, if we'd done this for 2 years, they would know where to be and what to do, and other players would know when to fill in when they weren't there, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I think what I'm getting at is we sort of complained about that on the last show, but maybe what we're doing here is seeing this from Klinsmann's perspective.
Before we do, actually, sorry, this really did just blow my mind, and I want to get to this idea for a second of. You've been going. I'm sure in your life you have been ill prepared for an exam, right? And you know that feeling...
It was actually a philosophy exam.
There we go.
It genuinely was. But you nearly didn't go, and I went in the end.
But you know that feeling of, like, I am not ready for this, and you're around those people who have their, like, organized notes and their flashcards, and you're just like, I'm not prepared for this. And I imagine that's how U.S. players feel on a regular basis. And it is, I think, Klinsmann being like, no, I'm the cool like tutor who's like, no, we'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Just believe in yourselves. And it's like, no, I need to know how to add. This is a math class. Like, and I just wonder if maybe that's...
What are these squiggly figures? What do they mean?
But we've heard little rumors here and there about discontent within the team. But by the same token, it seems that Klinsmann is a charming, very affable fellow. Yeah. And I wonder if that's where that comes from, is players just continuously going out or not even continuously, but frequently Or even once in a while, just being like, I don't know what we're doing. I don't feel like I'm prepared for this, and that's really frustrating for me as a professional soccer player. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, though, you're right, that I think we should try to see it a little bit more from his perspective, because we're obviously seeing it from an outsider's view and not the person who's in charge trying to change the system.
Right. I think we're looking at what we want, right? Mm-hmm. We want a system that's practiced and that we can roll out against Colombia, and everyone knows their role, and therefore you can like grind out some magnificent 1-0 win. Mm-hmm. Like the way Bob Bradley had a system for his players, and we went to the Confederations Cup final and beat Spain. Like it really worked. The sort of defend deep, counter, like run and gun, hit him on the counter. Right? Mm-hmm. It really, really worked because it was a designed system and it had the right players in the right places to do it. Right? So maybe we have to realise that Klinsmann doesn't see that as his priority. He sees the long-term thing of I need to change the mentality of American sports. American soccer, that is my job. And maybe we will feel the benefit of Klinsmann's reign like 10, 15 years in the future.
Yeah, but also maybe he's not like some incredible figure who knows all about sport. Like, by the same token, though, and I promise I was trying to be positive, but isn't that
it's frustrating.
I mean, isn't that an incredibly... for like a patronizing way to approach this is like, I know how we should be doing it because he talks about it like this isn't how it would be in Germany. We would never ask where you went to school. We would ask what you studied. Yeah. It's a very different setup. And so it does almost feel in that regard of like, I'm coming in and telling you how to do it because you guys are doing it wrong.
But don't you think some of what he said, I agree that is patronizing, and I think the way he phrases it is kind of disrespectful many times. But I also think there is some truth to what he says.
Mm-hmm. How so?
Just the idea of like people maybe staying in college too long, and then like he was talking in the Wall Street Journal article about people talking about Steve Birnbaum as a rookie, which he was a couple of years ago, right? But he's like 24, 25 now, you know what I mean? And he's like that, and that always seems weird to me. Yeah. And I look at Steve Birnbaum and think if he had been with a professional team from the age of 17 instead of like going to college and then being drafted to MLS, he'd probably be an even better player than he is now. And he's actually very, very good right now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And he was also talking about things like who did he name check? Breck Shea.
As being good or bad?
As bad examples.
Emerson Hyman is a bad example. Breck Shea is a bad example.
Yeah, like guys who are obviously talented. He was talking about guys who are obviously talented and maybe don't have the mentality to just do everything that's possible to knock someone else out of a team.
And interestingly, he talks about Julian Green, I think, sort of as a bad example, where it's like, fine, you don't want to play in Bayern Munich's second team, then prove that you belong somewhere else. Uh-huh. But I think also, if you flip that around, it makes a little more sense why he included him in that 2014 roster. Because he talks about how he wants players to go out and fight for that position. Yeah. And you don't approach it from a perspective of, okay, well, it's that guy's position now. It's Clint Dempsey's position now. But one day he's going to retire, and then I'll be the next in line. Uh-huh. And the person he talks about specifically is Jermaine Jones. Right. But he's like, Jermaine Jones approaches every single game, every single practice. Like, this is my spot, and I'm fighting for it, and you cannot have it. And I think that's why Klinsmann loves Jermaine Jones.
Yeah.
I would also say...
But weirdly, that gets you in the starting 11, even if someone is maybe better suited for a specific game.
Right.
That, I think, is the crux of the problem. And I feel like we're getting into describing Klinsmann problems here. Maybe this isn't the time to do it because we still have 2 games to go in the Copa America.
This is true, but I actually want to say I've come a little bit around because just talking about it more, I would say that it comes off as this incredibly like I'm here to change things. But he's here to change things because he's being forced to do an interview. And the reality is there's a distinct possibility that what he's referring to is within the camp when they're all together, if someone calls Steve Birnbaum a rookie, he says he's 25. That's not a rookie.
Yeah.
Christian Pulisic isn't a rookie. He's a veteran at this point. And I think that's what Klinsmann would say, honestly, that he's been playing in the Bundesliga. He's played in European competitions. He's now been in U.S. camps. He's a veteran and he should be treated as such. And so maybe it's not so much the way the entire country needs to function as the way my team in this specific camp needs to function and think.
But still, his number one priority is changing the mentality of the camp, not sort of figuring out some really detailed tactics in order to win games.
Yeah, that's not important, Daryl. Tactics never win games.
And I would say, obviously, the way we do the show, we disagree with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many people are infuriated with Klinsmann. And what I'm trying to get at here is maybe it's not worth constantly getting angry about the lack of tactics. I mean, it sort of is, but it gets old to just keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Once you see it from his perspective and realise what his goal is, like maybe his goal is different to our goal.
Yeah, but how does that make it less frustrating? As an honest question, because that doesn't do anything for me.
It makes it more frustrating, but less likely that we can solve it from here.
Yeah,
You know
which makes it more frustrating.
Yeah.
I would say that it helps me to understand.
Not that we could solve it from here, but like less likely that we would come up with some weird tactical idea that he would also come up with at the same time, because he's not even thinking about that stuff.
That's true, but like it helps me to understand, I guess, who he is more as a person and his like. I told you about this, that one thing that completely baffled me amongst the many confusing things about that Colombia game is when Christian Pulisic subbed on. Or, I'm sorry, Pulisic. We got some comments about that. Pulisic, we'll do our best. You saw Klinsmann and Pulisic on the sideline conversating, as it were, and Klinsmann's laughing, and Pulisic kind of like laughs along and then subs in, and it's just like Diego Simeone, if he's 2-0 down, is never smiling. He's not smiling anyway, but he's certainly not smiling in that situation, and it gives you insight into Klinsmann's idea is, I'm your buddy and I'm cheering you up to go out there, and I'm trying to motivate you to go out there and be positive and be productive within your own self, versus go out there, I want you to run at this angle and I want you to cut inside when Michael Bradley comes across. Like, he's not giving him that instruction.
He's thinking about mentality.
He's saying, you're a veteran now. Go continue to be a veteran.
I actually think he's trying to relax him. I think he's trying to just make sure Pulisic is relaxed and send him in that way, and that's why they're laughing before.
Right.
But what I'm saying is it's more about mentality than it is about a tactical thing.
Right.
Which is, I guess, is what you're saying as well.
Yeah, I think so. But
right,
then
high five for agreement.
But then we also go back the full circle route of, I don't think it's relaxing to be sent in to a game where you have to get a goal and be like, just try to score a goal. Like, I want to know how exactly he thinks I can score a goal so I can do that. But it also gives us insight into maybe what he's going to do going forward in this tournament, which is continue to reward those players who it seems like are up for it, ready for it, and willing to take the bull by the horns. And maybe Pulisic is one of those players.
And it also means that we're not, again, like we said on the last show, we're not going to come up against a Colombia again in this group. So it's maybe a team where we could maybe win a game on talent, as opposed to we need some complicated tactical system to do it. Right? If anything, the Costa Rica game is the mirror image. Right? The Costa Rica game is a team with more system than talent that overperforms and goes to quarterfinals. And
Ticos fans, please don't get mad. There's plenty of talent in your roster.
Yeah, we understand.
But I get what you're getting at, which is to make it as far as they did in the 2014 World Cup, the sum of the whole is greater than the parts. Yeah. However that saying goes. Yeah. I just George Bush that one.
So today's show, we are going to talk a little about Costa Rica, Paraguay, but in a way there wasn't that much to talk about. We are going to watch that Costa Rica, Paraguay game in detail. We won't subject you to that, listener. When we'll figure out exactly what Costa Rica are doing. We have a rough idea, but we want to get into the nitty-gritty details. And we will put out a big preview show about how the US can face Costa Rica, but we'll also keep in mind how Klinsmann thinks and what's realistic.
Yeah, fair? I like it.
Okay, so shall we move on to Saturday's action?
We should.
The Copa America Centenario 2016.
Through the lens of our specific predictions, does that work? Usually we'd maybe talk about things in a broader context based on the crazy action of the day, but with one goal over 3 games, maybe we look at our specific predictions to guide us.
Okay, so Costa Rica, Paraguay, the other game in Group A. First thing is, that's a good result for the United States.
Yes.
0-0 is a good result. It means they each get a point. None of them has 3 points, and they're not sort of in pole position for second place in the group.
I'm still with you. I think you said this is what we want, right? We want a 0-0 draw, or we want a draw here. And then the consensus was yes. That's what the people at Fox kept telling us.
And but 0-0 is the best of all the draws because then they don't get any goals scored. Goal difference.
But it's also a weird situation because I think the other people who would be agreeing that a 0-0 was a good result were the players on Costa Rica and Paraguay.
Do you think so?
Yeah, a little bit. Especially in the second half when it seemed like they were all, I think, very, very hot, very tired. Maybe there was half an hour left and they're like, it's been a physical game so far. We might hurt ourselves more. We might get into more physical challenges. Maybe we just kind of take our time, and if something happens, something happens.
Here's my quick take on the game. 2 teams who both like to defend and then counter. Both were aware of the counter-attacking threat from the other team. So neither team was willing to counter too hard unless they got to prevent them getting countered. That's what happened. No one was willing to push too many men forward. Everybody had compact men in the middle. Most of that game, if you watch it, is multiple midfielders crowded in midfield and the ball pinballs around. Fair?
Yes. You know that I like to play the Total War franchise of video games. And it reminds me of when you're playing it and you're on like the high ground of one side and the other army is on the other high ground, and both of you just won't move for the entire battle because it's like, I'm not leaving the high ground.
Absolutely.
No. I know how this goes. I'm staying right here, buddy. And then maybe in this situation but then both of you decide to leave the high ground at the exact same moment, and you just converge in the middle, and it kind of gets real sloppy real fast.
And so the way that this went, for our predictions, we each made a goalkeeper prediction. Obviously, because of the refusal to leave the high ground from each team, there wasn't that much for each goalkeeper to do, but let's very quickly run through our predictions anyway.
Sure.
What was yours?
So I predicted more or less what we saw, which is that you'd have compact teams sitting back, inviting the opponent in, but not
shots from distance. That's what you thought was coming.
Exactly, but not really making it easy for those opponents to come in. So I thought we would see 38-year-old goalkeeper Justo Villar pulling off a full stretch save, because I thought there'd maybe be that one from distance that would be going up top corner, and he would have time to see it, full stretch, and get a paw to it.
Didn't happen, did it?
According to Twitter, it did. I don't know if you saw that video, but that was a pretty mean save.
That was a pickup.
I wish you had seen how much time I spent trying to find a way, like with my camera, so when he bent to pick that ball up, to make it look like he was diving.
Yeah.
Like I turned it upside down, I turned it on its side to see if I could get one image that made it look that way. And there was no chance.
So my prediction was for Costa Rica's new first-choice goalkeeper after Keylor Navas was injured, Patrick Pemberton. I predicted he would be caught statue-like, and a goal would go past him. He really didn't get many shots at him. I think Paraguay created a couple of things through Dolis Gonzalez down the right. The couple of cutbacks for, is it Benitez, I think, and he fired wide. Nothing really doing there. Yeah,
I mean, to the point where at the end of the game, a total of 6 shots on target, 4 for Costa Rica, 2 for Paraguay. So really not the goalkeeper challenge that maybe we thought it would be, but certainly an indicator of things the United States should be prepared for, which is physicality, a lot of running, and if you're playing against Costa Rica, a somewhat fluid, confusing formation at times.
Well, to give you a very quick preview then, it's essentially 5 at the back, then 2 defensive midfielders, then 2 central attacking midfielders in Ruiz and Campbell, who can also go wide, and then 1 forward.
Right.
And then that is kind of fluid, and they each know exactly where they're going to go at given moments, and it's kind of impressive.
Yes.
It is kind of impressive.
It gets you far into the World Cup, so yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Shall we move on to the game that had a goal?
Yeah. Hooray.
So next up...
Didn't really work out for me, though.
One thing that did happen in Costa Rica-Paraguay... At half-time, we had a glorious moment in the Fox Sports studio when Fernando Fiore basically got his backpack, which was not zipped up at all, and left in the middle of a segment and said, "Hey guys, I'm leaving. I've got to go do Mexico-Uruguay."
He's awesome.
He is awesome, right?
Yep.
I feel like there's going to be 50% of people super annoyed with his kind of clownish antics, and 50% of people like us who are kind of enjoying it.
Yeah, it definitely is a good insight into the way different people approach different games and situations, because you have Alexi Lalas and Eric Winalda doing a good job and being, very serious and to the point, and they're describing things, and it's this and it's that, and then in the meantime, you have Fernando rolling his eyes and literally doing the Macarena and singing the lyrics to the Macarena.
It's kind of brilliant.
It's very good.
It's like a wild card.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a wild card that they've thrown into the usual Fox Sports coverage, which we see in the Champions League and for national team games.
Yeah.
They've just completely blown it up.
It's like, why not? Let's see what happens.
It's magnificent.
Well, so you have a theory about Fox's coverage for this game. Is that correct?
So they're doing like hour-long pre-game and a lot of like wrap-up stuff and all of that. And it's not that Copa America Centenario doesn't deserve that much coverage, but it doesn't deserve like hour-long pre-game for Haiti, Peru, for example, right?
Yeah.
I think Fox Sports are using the Copa America Centenario as a test run or a practice session, sort of, for World Cup 2018.
Right.
Because they have the rights to World Cup 2018.
And therefore, it makes sense to see.
They do have the rights for World Cup 2018.
I believe so.
Yeah.
So then it makes sense to see these little moments, because it is probably testing it out to see if it gets a 50-50 reaction or a 70 favorable, 30 not favorable, and then they kind of stick with it.
It also explains why Fox Sports' promotion of all these games is the road to Russia starts here.
Yes, and I was so perplexed by that, and you were trying to explain it to me, and I was just the old hard-headed man of like, but this isn't anything related to the World Cup. I know, but you can explain that it is, and it kind of sounds like it could be, but it's not. Like, I think I was stubborn.
It works. It doesn't work on two levels, right? It doesn't work on one level, which is that hardcore soccer fans, who are probably the people mostly watching Copa America, know that this is not a qualification tournament for the World Cup. World Cup qualification is happening elsewhere, and then newbie soccer fans could easily be tricked into thinking the road to Russia starts here. This is a qualification tournament for the World Cup.
I know I'm going to have that conversation with somebody during this tournament who was like, so if they win, do they go to the World Cup? It's absolutely and because it's a confusing situation where you've got a lot of big teams playing each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people don't quite understand why it's happening in the United States.
But my new theory is that they're saying that because for them it does. That we are practicing. We are like getting our game down in terms of like camera work and studio work ready for World Cup 2018. It's a brilliant thing to do.
It is. Can I say one negative thing about it? Please don't tell me about how great Fox Soccer to Go is, because when I'm literally trying to use it at that moment and it's not working, it kind of makes my head explode.
Oh, no. Fox Soccer to Go is the one that you pay for. Fox Sports Go is the one that's on your phone and isn't working.
Yes, that's what it was. Yeah. Well, it's just that I've been hogging the television all day. Yeah. I decided my wife and my mother-in-law could maybe watch a movie in the sense that I was like, I've been sitting on this couch for a very long time. I should probably go live my life.
I will say my Fox Sports Go works just fine.
That's great, but I was watching it. My point is to say that I was watching it on the television. So obviously I have the subscription, and then I logged in, and they're like, oh, no, you're not subscribed to that channel. I was like, but
it's over there.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, I guess.
Well, this is one of the things they will work out ready for World Cup 2018.
Let's hope so.
All right, so before we move on to Haiti, Peru, we've got to talk about the most dramatic moment of Costa Rica, Paraguay, which came in the 93rd minute and 40 seconds of a 95th minute game.
It came in the 94th minute. I think it was like 93:30 is when it happened.
Basically, there were 30 seconds left.
Yeah, and by the end, there was no seconds left.
Kendall Waston, the big Costa Rican centre-back who plays in MLS, was sent off. And protested, to paraphrase Lady Macbeth, that me think the lady doth protest too much.
He protested at first in a very like hands-on-head sort of way.
Yeah, like I can't believe this.
Right, which I can kind of understand because maybe in the moment you're like, no, I do think you have that instinct of like, no, if he sees that I think I'm innocent. And then I'll say that then all of his teammates swarmed the referee, and Waston did as well. But if you look, all of them are begging and pleading, and Waston is silent. He doesn't he doesn't talk. He's just kind of standing there like, I know what this is. I'm done. I'm going to walk away now.
So it's essentially a scissor tackle on Valdez at midfield.
At midfield in front of the referee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess you're the one who called it a scissor tackle as the absolute justification for the red card.
Right.
And I agree, but I think I should hand it over to you to explain to listeners why this is such a obvious red card.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially more or less from behind, and he leads with his left foot to try to win the ball, which he may well have gotten the ball. But number one, he does so again from behind, which means you're always going to be going through the player, so it's got to be extra clean.
Even in instructions to referees, I think tackle from behind is like highlighted as a thing to maybe prevent happening.
But if you imagine for a second that like you are sliding around a person and poking the ball away with your left foot, and then if you bring your right foot through, that's where the scissor idea comes from. You could even go like noose or cross or whatever you want to go with. Like you're basically cutting into them, and there's a decent risk that you break a person's leg or twist an ankle or definitely severely injure them.
Because you're putting pressure from two different directions.
Exactly.
Right? That's how you break bones.
And also the idea would be that if you're running at full speed, you're already sort of off balance. We've talked about this before, about why a player goes flying when they're just touched. It's because they're at full speed. So if you're at full speed, you're sort of already in a vulnerable position. And so then to be hit from two sides can definitely cause damage.
So definite red card.
Definite red card.
Also a weird place to do it, right?
Definitely. And
because there wasn't a massive counterattack happening.
Yeah, I think it was meant to be a professional foul because it was kind of a break there at midfield. And then maybe he didn't mean to, but that leg comes across and it's always going to be a red. And this is speaking as someone who really, really didn't want Kendall Waston to get a red card for specific predictions purposes. Because I had a prediction that he would score a headed goal in the group stage, and he is now not scored in the first game and will be suspended for the second game. That said, that's suspended against the United States. So, I'm okay with it.
I actually can't tell you off the top of my head who the fourth choice Costa Rican centre-back is in their back three.
That's why you're not Costa Rica's head coach.
Yeah, I will find out tomorrow. So on the big preview show, we will find out who will be playing centre-back for Costa Rica against the USA in that all-important all-important game.
Sounds good. Shall we move on to the second game of the day? Haiti,
yes,
Peru?
The one with the goal.
Yeah.
So it was in Seattle. It was Haiti 0, unfortunately. Peru won a 61st-ish minute goal for Paulo Guerrero, a diving header.
Yep, I think it was
diving header.
I think it was 66th minute. I do believe, if my notes serve me. So it's a good goal for Peru. Again, not a great game for our specific predictions, as I think we both went 0 in this one.
So we should explain maybe to people who do not have, or maybe listening to us for the first time, one of the things we do to preview and review a game is we look at the two teams matched up against each other, and instead of trying to say, I think they're going to win 2-1, because most people, if they're honest, they pick those scores out of the air. Yep. Right? That's not really based on anything.
At best, it's like gut instincts, because you're like, oh, well, Rooney might get one here, and Vardy might get one, but I could see Turkey pulling one back, so 2-1. Yeah. Like, it's not really based on anything other than like kind of a complete guess of your feelings.
So we base our specific predictions on sort of patterns of play we've seen, or how we try, or how two teams match up against each other. And even if we get them wrong, it hopefully gives us things to talk about afterwards. We either talk about why it did happen or why it didn't happen. Sounds like your Haiti prediction didn't happen, Taylor. And what was it?
My Haiti prediction was
I'm basing this on the look on your face.
Wild Donald Guerriere. Yes, I'm going to go how you pronounce it. Yes, started on the wing for Haiti. I predicted he would score because I wanted Haiti to get a goal. He did not score. He was in the mix, but unfortunately not on the score sheet.
So this gives us an opportunity to talk about the way Haiti attacked.
Sure.
This is what kind of endeared them to me.
Yeah?
So I would expect a team like Haiti, which is a small nation, not a big powerhouse team.
Led by a Bond villain.
I actually thought it was more like George Bluth from Arrested Development.
I saw Larry David as well. Regardless, Haiti's coach is
French coach.
He's an interesting-looking gentleman.
I would expect them to come and just defend for their lives, honestly. But instead, what we saw was a team that defended solidly. They had like a compact back four, but weren't like super like tucked in and scared. And then when they did get the ball, they broke at pace, and pretty much every player was really keen to just dribble at pace directly at the Peruvian defense.
Right.
In a really like exciting, impressive way. Like every player seemed convinced that they were Cristiano Ronaldo and they could dribble. And I love it. I love the optimism and the directness of that.
Maybe Klinsmann gave them a pep talk about believing in themselves. Much like Farnsworth Bentley in the Dave Chappelle sketch. That's a topical one.
This is the way Haiti have played, right? Because we did the preview, we watched a lot of their earlier games. They really like go at teams on the counter attack.
So I think that was part of what was interesting to me about watching Haiti. The other thing, I think it was not Stu Holden. It was Hercules Gomez was doing the color commentary.
Yes.
And he was pointing out, which is something that somehow I did not notice until he said it, Haiti, slightly larger than their Peruvian counterparts. So there was definitely a significinged height disadvantage.
Oh, I thought you talked about the size of the country. You talked about the
physical size.
Yeah.
So Haitian players, at least in this game, were bigger and seemed a little bit stronger, and were thus more adept at holding players off the ball and shielding. And it seemed like a lot of times they would be holding off the ball, trying to shield, and then a Peruvian player would be doing everything he could to get the ball and would kick out, and it's a foul.
Yeah.
So it seemed like that size advantage very quickly became something that Haiti were trying to utilize and play off of.
Absolutely. Hercules Gomez, I actually enjoyed his commentary. Yeah. He has a weirdly pleasant voice. Like, he sounds very relaxed when he's doing it.
What I know about people is that they love it when you compliment them by saying, I actually enjoyed that.
Well, I say this because he's a first-time color commentary guy,
and he did, you're right, I think the first time we saw him behind the desk, he did look a little bit nervous, and every time he's looked a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, I think he's grown into this. It's the second day of the tournament. I think by the end we'll say, no, this Hercules Gomez character, he's still playing for Seattle, obviously, but he may have a future behind the desk.
Might could.
World Cup 2018?
Yeah.
Right? He could be on trial for World Cup 2018.
For a second I thought you meant for the U.S. national team, and I was like, I think that ship might have sailed, but you never know. You never know with Klinsmann.
All right, we've got to talk about my specific prediction.
We do.
So my prediction was that Christian Cueva, the Peruvian left winger, would... my prediction in my head was he would cross with his left foot and Paulo Guerrero would score a header. I believe when I listened back to the show, I accidentally said right foot. I got it wrong.
Sure did.
So I would have not got the point anyway, because Cueva heavily uses his left foot. If you're a new listener, usually I get the left and right not confused.
Nah.
I write it on my shoes so I know which one is which.
Yeah.
Not the whole thing, I write L and R.
So you didn't get that one, though.
I came close, though.
You sure did.
Because Paulo Guerrero scored the winner for Peru with a diving header, and the cross came from the left, a left-footed cross, but it was Flores out there. It was Flores playing left wing, crossing the ball.
Right.
And Christian Cueva was involved. He's the guy that flicked it on out left to Flores. And this is because Peru have changed up their deployment of Christian Cueva.
Right.
So he normally was a left winger. All the highlights I saw, he was a left winger. That's why my prediction was he would play on the left wing and cross in with his left foot. But they have sort of promoted him to central attacking midfielder. It's almost like he's taken a step up.
Right.
He's also got a transfer to Sao Paulo in Brazil. Wears the number 10 shirt, he's become their main man. So it's to my disadvantage, but to Peru's advantage, because he had a kind of impressive game.
He did. He absolutely did. You actually also did a fairly impressive thing that I've not seen you do before with specific predictions, which is sort of doubling down, that if you had gotten this point, you would have gotten it twice, because you did actually get a point in this game. Because your group preview, you predicted that Paulo Guerrero would score with his head.
Right.
So you get that group prediction point, just not your specific one on the day.
Okay,
but I think that might
enough.
put you ahead overall in our competition.
Can we talk a little bit about this goal?
Sure.
So the diving header is kind of impressive as a feat of athleticism.
Yeah.
And Guerrero does make it like a kind of clever run just off the back of the centre-back to get a little bit of freedom. But it's really about the cross, isn't it?
Yeah, here's the we watch these goals on like time and time again to try to figure out the little nuances, the little things that happen. I watched this goal probably 15 times at home. We watched it a few times in studio, and all I can say is that it's just a perfect ball from Flores. It's hit with, I think, the left foot, instep of the left foot. He bends it around the two center backs, but it's far enough away from the goalkeeper that he can't get to it, and it's hit low and hard enough that there's no chance of either group getting to it.
Yeah.
And instead it gets to Guerrero's head.
I think, actually, if we want to relate this maybe to the US men's national team, we'd complained in the past about DeAndre Yedlin's crossing. And there was an example in the Colombia game where essentially when Yedlin uses his pace to get to the end line, what he'll do most of the time, if he's crossing it high, he'll just chip it into the box and it's going to go up and high and hopefully land on someone's head.
Yeah.
Right? The way Flores does it is more like the way, say, David Beckham does it. Not saying it's as good, but it's the same sort of thinking where you pick a spot and you know that you've got to get it behind defenders but not close enough to the goalkeeper, so you can go like so far but not too far, and you land it in the place where you know is the most dangerous.
Right.
And that's what Flores does.
He does, and he also, and again, this is why I say the cross is so impressive rather than the run, is because the run itself, it's Guerrero doesn't really change pace. He's kind of always going towards that far post. Because I listened back...
It's the correct run. It's just not... There's nothing fancy about it.
No, exactly, because I listened back to this preview, the group preview, because you were talking about him scoring with his head. I wanted to see if it correlated. And your point was he's really good about making a change in direction, that he'll go far post, but then he'll cut near post. And that's why he's able to get wide open. So I looked again, and he just drifts to that far post, and it's just perfectly there for him to head. And it made me feel sad for Haiti's goalkeeper. Is it Placide?
Yeah.
I always want to say Placide, but it's not.
I think that's because I started doing that. I might have tricked you into that.
That's all good. But I mean, he did have some big saves, and it is, to keep the prediction game going, one of your predictions for Placide was that he would have the most saves of the group, but the worst goal difference. Right now, I think both of those things are true.
Is that right?
Because there's only been one goal in the group. So far, you're good to go.
We should also talk about Haiti's almost equaliser.
Yeah.
So drama in the 94th minute in the Costa Rica Paraguay game, drama in the Haiti-Peru game. Like I said, they may be a lot of people's second team after this performance. There was it was a free kick, I think, comes in. I've forgotten the name of the player.
Belfort.
He gets to the far post, has a header. Is it the far post?
Yeah, it's like center of the goal, but he's aiming for the far post.
Okay, and heads it wide. And he even sort of knows there's so little time left, he doesn't even get up. He lies on the floor.
There's also so little time left that there's only really 2 replays, I think, shown, and they're from the same angle. And I really still can't say what happened for sure, but I can tell you that Stu Holden, who is, I think, doing the commentary for this game, I guess it was Hercules Gomez still, right?
I think so.
I don't know why I thought it was...
We may have got our commentators confused.
Yeah, okay. No, I think it was Hercules Gomez for this game, was saying...
I just realised Fox Sports could start putting together a pretty good team.
Yeah, for real. For real, they could. But so maybe...
It's Kobe Jones in the Brazil-Ecuador game.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a solid squad. And then you got Ronaldo and Laos in studio.
Yeah. Rob Stone played college soccer.
Suddenly I'm wondering. But anyway, so then it was Hercules Gomez who said that it hit off of his chest, that he didn't head it cleanly, that he misjudged the ball basically and hits off his chest. I could see that, but I could also see it as just trying to like flick it on into the side netting and it just going wide. Either way, it really is. He misses it. Goal kick's taken. Final whistle goes. Belfort on the ground, weeping. Picked up by my man, Guerrier, but that's not really a goal, so I guess that doesn't really count. But you do feel bad for him, because it really was a pretty obvious opportunity.
But it finishes 1-0 to Peru. Peru are top of Group B because in the other game, really the big game of the day, at the Rose Bowl, Pasadena, it was Brazil 0, Ecuador 0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of a bummer overall, I have to say.
Yeah. Should we talk a little bit about the shape of this game?
Sure.
I'll tell you how I saw it. You tell me how you saw it.
Sure.
I saw an Ecuador team that was more open, a little more open in the first half.
Yep.
Brazil couldn't find the passes to get through in behind them and create a decent chance. In the second half, Ecuador literally tightened up.
Yeah, I think so.
They kept I looked at the TV so many times, and you saw all the Ecuador players clustered, and Brazil just could not pass their way through it. I think too many times they tried to maybe dribble their way through it, and it didn't work out.
Right. And I think if I were to add anything onto that, I would just say that in that first half, you did have Walter Iovi and Antonio Valencia in that starting 11.
Back, yeah.
You didn't have them against the U.S.
Right.
And so I think maybe you're just kind of tweaking it a little bit. You're figuring it out because you've got these new players coming in who can't join the camp late.
Well, I mean, new, but they've been playing for Ecuador for years and years. And years. So it's not like they're fresh off.
But they haven't had those maybe tune-ups, and maybe that just explains a little bit why they weren't quite so compact.
Yeah.
And by the second half, they had the time to figure it out. They had halftime to discuss.
Yeah.
Much tighter in the second half.
Because I saw, so Antonio Valencia plays on the right. I saw him doing a lot of defensive work and defensive organising. Did you notice he would have the left winger, I think Coutinho or Felipe Luis coming from deep, running at him, and he's got his right back Paredes, I think, behind him, and he's constantly pointing at Paredes and pointing at where they want play to go and organising the guys around him
and following up. And I think that's a big difference because that's something we talked about with the U.S. national team. Not to go back to it, but against Colombia, we would see Jermaine Jones marking James Rodriguez. He would get within touching distance or spitting distance, we'll say, of Fabian Johnson, for example, and he would point and say oh, he's yours now. And then Jermaine Jones would go off to try to mark somebody else. James Rodriguez is smart enough to be oh, no one's marking me.
Yeah, we talked about him as a bad Uber passenger, right?
I saw Antonio Valencia on multiple occasions send somebody away, and then you'd see him check to make sure they were covered. It wasn't just job's done, I'm off to my next thing. That's the crafty veteran leadership move of a crafty veteran defender-ish.
But the story here is kind of Brazil, because Brazil fans booed their team at full time. I don't think Ecuador are that bad a team that a 0-0 draw against them is worth a boo.
Again, I think they are second in CONMEBOL qualifying at the moment. They are very much up there, and they are a very good team.
But But I still think maybe they've got cause for complaint, just maybe not as much as they did complain. Right?
Yeah. And I think the reason why you saw Brazil fans boo was not because it was a 0-0 draw. I mean, it's the first game of a tournament. It's hot. It's a good opponent. I think it's because things just looked disjointed. Things just looked like parts were being forced into places that didn't fit. You'd see a lot of quick passing that was good, and then it would just be somebody passing into space where there's no Brazilian player,
or passing into wall of Ecuador players.
Or not turning. There was one situation when it was it
are we talking about the thing in the box? Yeah.
Is it Elisa? Is that his name?
Elias.
Elias, thank you.
Number 8. Yeah, there was Elias in the box who tried to cut it back for Jonas. But
yeah.
It was going to be a 1-2. We didn't really check where Jonas was. And he played this clever pass. It would have been a clever, outside of the foot, cut back if someone was there.
Right.
And the whole move broke down.
Right, there was that one.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that one. But I was talking about the second half when he gets the ball and he tries to thread the needle to, I forget who the attacker is.
Yeah.
And it might be Gabigol at that point. But there's 3 Ecuadorian players in front of him, and there's a Brazilian player behind him wide open. But he doesn't turn. And it's just little moments like that show that I think this team isn't quite as unified as maybe Brazilian fans would like. And they're taking that anger, the frustration with that out on Dunga. Worth noting that it's also maybe not unified because they keep having to bring in new players because players keep getting injured.
So, without going too deep into this, the weird thing with this Brazil team, if people aren't aware, is that, first of all, it's kind of a disjointed roster because Brazil are hosting the Olympics, and therefore they've never won the Olympics. They want to win it while they host it, especially to make up for 2014 World Cup. So, guys like Neymar, literally Neymar, their best player, easily their best player, has been held out of the Copa America to play in the Olympics.
Right.
So there's that. I can't remember maybe the other names, but there are definitely guys being held back.
Thiago Silva, David Luiz, Marcelo, not included.
Yeah, I think at least one of those might be just because Dunga doesn't want them around. But,
the Marcelo is the obvious one there, yeah.
But but there are lots of players missing to begin with, okay? And we talked about this on the preview. Still, they had 23 great players to call up. There were guys like Douglas Costa in there. Ricardo Oliveira I was very excited about with his heading ability. The older gentleman at centre forward who was in sort of the form of his life. both injured.
You're real careful because of the gerontology connection, aren't you?
Well, he's also the same age as me.
Okay.
Douglas, like old for a profprofessional footballer,
young
for a podcaster. Douglas Costa is out. I think Kaká came in because he was already Orlando-based. Kaká got injured. He's out. I've even forgotten the list. There's more and more players who have come into that team and been took out. Rafinha,
Luis Gustavo.
There's so many guys who've come in and out. I really think they're finding it hard to use a Klinsmann phrase, get their rhythm.
Yeah.
Because it was like a weird squad to begin with, and then they were like shorn of a lot of players, and then again, like in a third wave.
Yeah.
That's not an excuse, but it is a mitigating factor.
I think it certainly is. And I also think that it is the type of performance that you got a point against certainly the toughest opposition in that group.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I forget who it was who pointed out on Twitter that what this probably means is that now it's going to come down to who has the better goal difference in terms of who goes through in first place between Brazil and Ecuador, which means Haiti and Peru, buckle up, because there's going to be some shooting at your goal.
Speaking of shooting, I want to talk about my specific prediction because it also leads to the most controversial and dramatic moment of this game.
Let's do it. Can we say first that my prediction was that Willian would draw a yellow card? That didn't happen. My prediction, 0-3 on the day. Now let's have a longer conversation about yours.
We did see him on the floor twice, right?
We did.
From injuries.
Yeah.
And I really thought that he was going to draw a yellow card just because he'd been knocked down twice, and it didn't work out.
But it wouldn't have happened because I would have gotten it maybe technically, but not in spirit, because I actually said it would be because he's so quick and pacey. Walter Aovi, older as well. I think maybe the same age as you. And coming off a long season, coming into camp late, might have to resort to a foul to stop Willian. That's where that came from. So it wouldn't have mattered because Aovi did not get a yellow card, did not commit any fouls on Willian as far as I can remember.
Okay, so my prediction was, it was a little more complicated than this, but it was essentially that Jefferson Montero would create a goal-scoring chance, right? The complication was that I said it would be Walter Aovi, the left-back, would lift the ball over Dani Alves, because Jefferson Montero's on the left wing, and then Montero would get down there, get in behind, create a goal-scoring chance. That kind of nearly happened a couple of times. Montero was part of that Ecuador counter-attack that kept happening and looked kind of threatening.
Yeah.
I would almost say they looked weirdly more likely to score than Brazil did. Brazil never really had a clear-cut chance, right? Whereas Ecuador looked dangerous on the break.
They might, I think you're right. I was conflating two games. Yeah, I think that's a safe shout, yeah.
But there was an incident in the second half where Jefferson Montero is sort of running at the Brazilian defence. He plays a ball down the outside of the box to Bolaños. Bolaños gets to it on the line and basically just hits it to try and keep it in bounds, I think. Hits it with the outside of his foot, and it bends in and around and into the near post of the Brazilian goal. Goalkeeper Alisson essentially, I think he hits him and goes in. Is that basically what happens?
Yes, and it looks ridiculous, and well, we'll get to it in a second. Go ahead. But yes, that's correct.
What's ridiculous?
Well, I was going to say, I've played goal in indoor before where you have that shot come in at an angle, and it looks like the most laughably terrible mistake. And it is if you're a professional goalkeeper.
Yeah.
But there's just something weird about a ball coming in at that tight of an angle when you're expecting a cross, so you're cheating over a little bit. So then to have to cover, you're already moving in that direction, and so you have to stop your momentum and push the ball away, and it's really easy to spill it and knock it into the goal, which is what Alisson did.
Yeah.
But it didn't count.
It didn't count because referee ruled, I think it was actually the assistant referee, the linesman who's on the far side, ruled that the ball had gone out of bounds before Bolaños hit it. We weren't sure, right? At the time, we were not sure.
I thought for sure it had gone out of bounds. I'll say that because of the way he looks as soon as he hits it, because it goes up in the air just a little tiny bit, it gives you this weird perspective as though it's out of bounds and coming back in, but that's just because he hits it up in the air.
So we went through all the Fox Sports replays. We found the best possible angle. We freeze-framed it on the TV, in the Total Soccer Show office here.
I guess you freeze in the TV and then it's projected on the TV. Yeah.
And then we slowly move forward to find the point at which it may have gone out, like the farthest point, the most it had gone out of bounds. And we found it was just in bounds.
Right.
When Bolaños hits it.
We did. You took the photo, you posted it to Twitter, and the prevailing response was, yeah, it looks out of bounds to me.
Right.
And it does look out of bounds because you can see the green. There's the white line, and then you can see the green, and then there's the ball.
There is separation between the physical object of the ball and the white line of the line and there's green space in between.
But here's what I can tell you, Daryl.
That is not out of bounds, is it?
Balls are round.
Balls are round.
And just because you can see green space underneath the ball round comes up, and it's definitely, I shouldn't say definitely, but it looks to me as though...
I'm pretty confident.
Basically, the very edge of the ball is still, if you brought a line down, if you had a ruler there, it's touching the white line, it's still in bounds. Ball has not completely gone out of play.
So the side of the ball is essentially overhanging into the area where the line is, and it is really referred to as like the plane, right? It's like, I always imagine it, this is the way I do like mental things with it. If you were to take that white line and lift it up, would it touch the ball or not?
Yeah, it would, absolutely.
And it would touch the ball. Therefore, all of the ball is not out of bounds.
There we go. So,
are we confident on this, by the way?
I would say yes. I would say yes.
This is the law of the game, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it has to be completely out of bounds. And then Fox was kind enough to show us that there was, 60 yards between the linesman who's running at full speed because it is a counterattack. So he's not quite on the line when he calls the ball out of bounds.
Yeah.
So it's probably from distance. Again, what I was saying, where it's rolling on the ground, and then the kick makes it go up in the air, and I think just from that angle, again, up in the air is like 6 inches off the ground, but it's enough that from the angle, I think it looks out of bounds and comes back inside. Right. He also hits it really hard and in a really weird way because he is hurtling out of bounds at full speed. So I think it puts some weird swerve onto it, which makes it look even stranger and thus maybe even more out of bounds.
But we're saying goal.
I'm saying goal.
Right.
I'm saying it should have been a goal.
In our Copa America Centenario Group B table, Ecuador are joint top with Peru.
Yes, but as things stand, it's Peru top, Brazil, Ecuador, and then Haiti.
All right, so there's your Group B. Shall we move on to our Group C preview?
Sounds good to me.
It's Jamaica-Venezuela, and it's Uruguay-Mexico. I'm really excited about the second game. I'm moderately excited about Jamaica-Venezuela.
I'm pretty excited about Jamaica-Venezuela.
Okay.
Come on, you CONCACAF heroes.
So, Taylor, you've got the info, where is this game, and what time does it kick off?
I sure do. Jamaica-Venezuela is at Soldier Field. Do you know where Soldier Field is?
Chicago.
Attaboy.
I like the geography test I'm getting on all these.
You sure are. 5 p.m. on Fox. Big Fox.
Big Fox.
Big Fox.
Interesting, okay.
Sunday afternoon. Then 8 p.m. on Fox Sports 1, you've got Mexico v. Uruguay at University of Phoenix Stadium. I'm guessing you can figure out where that is?
Online? No, Phoenix, Arizona.
Incorrect. It's Tempe, Arizona.
What?
Sorry, buddy. You did your best. You did your best.
Is it like a suburb?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know how these things work.
So close to Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
Pretty much. So we've got the days, we've got the times, we've got the channels. Let's talk about the games themselves, shall we? Jamaica-Venezuela up first, 5 p.m. on Fox in Chicago.
Okay, Jamaica, Venezuela, the two smaller teams in the group. I'm not sure any Jamaican or Venezuelan would argue with that when there's Uruguay and Mexico also there. I wonder if this is a game where they both think this is the game that they should win.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
I think absolutely. That's kind of what my prediction is predicated upon.
Yeah, and so I know Venezuela play very defensive usually. I think we said they normally play 5 at the back and sit kind of deep.
Yep.
But my Venezuelan prediction is
5-4-1 coached by a goalkeeper.
5-4-1 coached by that is the best short summary. But they have scored in their previous 2 games, right? And in both their previous 2 games, Joseph Martinez has been the man creating the chances. So I predict that Joseph Martinez, who is a very sort of tricky, fancy flair player when he gets the chance, sometimes he plays up front, sometimes he plays on the wing, Joseph Martinez will make the Fox Sports highlight reel by the end of the game.
Okay. So for any number of reasons, it could be...
any number of it. It could be just one brilliant bit of skill that when they're putting the package together at the end, they're just like, oh, we've got to keep this. Or it could be, I think this is the more likely thing, is the chances that they do create will come through Joseph Martinez.
I see.
Right? So I don't want to guarantee a goal, but I want to guarantee that he will create something that is worthy of being included in the highlight reel.
See, this is why I make you explain it, because... You might get a little bit desperate. It might be like, well, see, he's in the highlight reel. You can see him off in the corner there standing.
He will do a thing in the highlight reel that is more than
standing. Oh, no, you said
around.
it. You said it at the end.
So I want to just give people a little preview of the game. Salomon Rondon is the guy who scores the goals, usually assisted by Joseph Martinez. So he's the guy that will be putting it in the net if Venezuela do put it in the net.
All right. Well, for Jamaica, I think the same thing as you said, essentially. I'm going to predict they will score in this game because they kind of have to score in this game if they're trying to get out of this group. This is one where they need the 3 points. Then you can play for draws against your 2 remaining opponents. Mexico and Uruguay, they're pretty good. I think I went back and watched Jamaica's recent 2-1 win over Chile. I think that if they score, it's going to come from the right-hand side of the field. So that's my prediction. So against Chile, you had a great run from Giles Barnes. It was great movement and delivery.
Giles Barnes, yes.
He got 2 assists in that game. One of them a little bit more generous than the other because one is essentially really skillful dribbling from Gareth McCleary on the flank. He crosses it in, Barnes kind of scuffs it, and then it falls to another player to score, but Giles Barnes gets the assist for having been the last player to touch. Finally, you have the overlapping runs of Javon Watson, who's the right back there.
Yes.
So you have that kind of right-hand side that's very creative, very pacey. So I think there's going to be a goal for Jamaica, and it's coming from the right-hand side of the field.
All right, I'll buy into it. So there's your Jamaica-Venezuela preview. The big game, it really is, the big game is Uruguay-Mexico. Remind me again when this is, where it is, and what channel I can watch it on, Taylor. This isn't a setup for the show. I genuinely do not know. I just know it's sometime tomorrow.
Fox Sports 1, 8 p.m. Game is being played at the University of Phoenix Stadium in Tempe, Arizona.
Oh, yeah, of course. So I do want to talk a little bit about Mexico. We really talked them up in our preview show, and I still stand by that. I also kind of feel like, having seen Mr. Fiore on Fox Sports, it was a reminder that Copa America, like Mexico often compete in it, and that this is a big tournament for them, and I also saw the TV figures for USA Colombia. 5.5 million people watched that game on Univision Deportes network. This tournament is big for Mexican Americans.
And forgive me, I can't remember if you've already said this and you've been talking for 15 seconds, so maybe that says something about the late hour. But there's also something to be said for the fact that they traditionally do send that team to Copa America, but they also have the Gold Cup that summer. So usually the team they send to Copa America is a weekend team. It's a B/C team.
Oh, it's at least lost some people to the Gold Cup team.
And so this is the first time they've competed in Copa America with their A team.
At full strength.
Yep.
Yeah. So I just really want to give Mexico their due in our coverage, and maybe give them a little more attention than we would normally. Right? I don't want to treat them like just some other team, like some other foreign team. I want to treat them like half of our team, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can we take slight ownership of Mexico?
I think we can do so because it's maybe sort of like if Leicester City were a little bit more obvious and we were like, yeah, let's talk about Leicester City. Because I really do think Mexico have a very good chance to go very far, if not win this tournament. I know that's kind of become the cliched statement amongst a lot of pundits, but I think if you look at the other teams that have played so far, Colombia looked pretty sharp. Outside of that, I haven't been that impressed by what I've seen, so I do think that there's a good opportunity for Mexico to do some big things in this tournament, and I think also because they seem pretty comfortable given that they're getting some pretty big numbers in terms of their attendance.
Big crowds. Some really big crowds.
So this one being played in Arizona, fairly close to the Mexican border. I think they're probably going to more or less have the home field advantage in this one.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they'll be well supported. They also will not be facing Luis Suarez. Luis Suarez is injured for Mexico, and that, I'm sure it plays into your prediction that you have for this game. It very much plays into mine.
It bums me out a little bit because you're talking about this game as though it's going to be incredibly exciting, and there's a distinct possibility it will, but I also think there's a distinct possibility that Jamaica-Venezuela has more goals in it, because I could see Uruguay really sitting back, playing very defensive, because, again, you don't want to lose that first game. You'd much rather have that draw and then play the two Jamaica-Venezuela weaker opponents. And so I could see Uruguay sitting back and playing maybe some cynical soccer.
But it's still, to me, honestly, it's more about the quality of soccer. When you look at the players on this field, you will see a high quality of soccer. Even Ecuador-Brazil, for all its problems, there were some high-quality moments because there were high-quality players there. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So to me, that makes it worth watching.
All right.
So thinking about Mexico, their big decision that they have to make, according to some previews I read, including one by Tom Marshall, former guest on the show. Follow him at Mexico World Cup if you want some good English language Mexico updates. Essentially, they have two formations. They have a 4-3-3, they have a 3-5-2, and they have to decide which of those formations is best suited to face up against Uruguay, right? So I wanted to make predictions about their wingers because I love watching Mr. Tecatito, and I've been really excited about Irving Lozano since he's sort of made his breakthrough. But if they go 3-5-2, those wingers may not be there. So if it's 4-3-3, watch out for those wingers, be excited. But I'm not going to predict about them in case they're not there, right? If it goes 3-5-2, the wing-backs will still be there, the full-backs. So I am predicting Paul Aguilar, the right-back, the right wing-back, depending on the formation, will have an assist. He will get down the right side and have an assist. This is the guy that hit that volley against the United States, if you remember, in the CONCACAF
Sure
Cup.
do.
And the reason I'm predicting this is when I look at Uruguay's most recent lineup, I can't remember the opponent. Luis Suarez is missing. They played Nicolas Lodero at left midfield. So Nicolas Ladero is a guy who doesn't often start for Uruguay or isn't guaranteed to start because he's one of those more sort of creative players, and so there isn't really room for him. But I feel like they're trying to get him into the team to replace some of the creativity or goal-scoring threat that's lost with Suarez, right? Mm-hmm. But they play him left midfield, and I think from there he will have a tendency to drift infield, and that could create holes for Aguilar to get forward, and that's why I think he's going to get an assist. How about that for a preview, Taylor Rockwell?
It's nicely done, except I think you might be mistaken, because I don't think that there are going to be any holes or any obvious holes, because I do think it's going to be a more compact Uruguay without Luis Suarez. My guess is going to be that Edinson Cavani has been playing on the left wing for Uruguay when Suarez is fit. Right. I think in this game he will start up top by himself, and it will be more of a 4-1-4-1 for Uruguay with Vecino sitting in just behind him.
I love Vecino. Vecino's going to be the Uruguayan Pirlo.
Okay.
Do you remember my preview? Yeah.
And I think that if you go back to the World Cup in 2014, Uruguay play the first game, admittedly a 3-1 loss to Costa Rica without Luis Suarez, and basically tried to do this same thing. Play the lone striker, foul a little bit, pick up some cards. So even though Uruguay have only had one card in their last 3 matches, I think you're going to see some fouls, some breaking up play, some not allowing counters to occur. So I'm saying that Uruguay will get 4 or more yellow cards in this game.
Oh, very nice. Mm-hmm. So we're both kind of predicting a game where Uruguay sit back somewhat, and then Mexico come at them.
Yes.
Because I am predicting that Ladero wanders and that space for Aguilar, and maybe he can have a go at Alvaro Pereira, the left back. But even if they sit back, it means Aguilar's going to have to go forward and join the attack. Right. Aguilar on the right and Layun on the left, they're both going to have to get involved. So either way, he's going to be getting forward, putting in crosses, maybe for Chicharito to get on the end of.
I was going to say.
Maybe for Oribe Peralta.
He's got some targets. He's definitely got some targets. And Raul Jimenez as well.
Who's the big fella? Jimenez.
Yeah.
Jimenez. Maybe for Jimenez to get on the end of.
But I also want to point out to your point that you're right. Even if Uruguay do play a little more defensively, you can also make the argument that like Venezuela playing a 5-4-1, it's very defensive, but you don't have players like Diego Godin, who will definitely start this game, and then he might be partnered by either Jimenez, his Atletico Madrid teammate, or Mauricio Victorino. You've got the Pereiras out wide, and you've got Fernando Muslera in goal, so you've got an experienced defense, a very good defense. So I think it could be an exciting game, even if Uruguay go defensive.
It could be a nice challenge for Mexico to have to break down a good team. Not like a Venezuela, I mean, with all due respect, not a Venezuela team who will come to defend, but a team that is good at defending.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep, exactly. I gotcha.
And then I also kind of fear for Uruguay because they don't have Suarez to lead that counter-attack, which is really what normally happens, if I recall correctly. The whole game plan used to be defend well, get the ball to Suarez, he'll probably score.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, that Suarez.
So I wonder how they'll cope with just Cavani.
Well, they'll have his beautiful hair, so I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out both of those games Sunday, right?
You got it.
We will be back with reviews.
No, we're actually previewing a game for next Wednesday, today. Yes, both games Sunday.
I wish we had that kind of lead time. We'll be back to review both of those games late Sunday night. We'll also, at some point during Sunday or Monday, have a deep dive on USA-Costa Rica. We'll really get you prepared for that game. And then later this week, we're going to do some European Championship group previews, right? We still have Group C, D, E, and F to go. Taylor Rockwell.
Yes, sir.
Busy week.
Busy week
once again. I want to say hello to all the new people who have found our show at the start of the Copa America. I want to say thank you to all the people who have stuck with us through Copa America. And I think we should say a special thank you to the people who have expressed concern for our well-being.
Yes. It's very kind of you all. So far, so good, though.
Yeah, a lot of people have said, like, make sure to go for a walk with your wives in between. Make sure to get some fresh air. Like, don't go crazy. We're doing okay, but we really, genuinely, it's very touching that people are concerned about how much content we're putting out. We've planned for this, and we're enjoying it, right?
But maybe we could put, like, our mailing address up, and if you want to send us some energy drinks or, different types of coffee, it's all gravy.
Well, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk lots of Copa America with me today.
Same at you, Mr. Grove.
Listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. We will talk to you again very soon.